Coming up on Arirang News, South Korean President Moon Jae-in announces an expansion of the Korean New Deal, launched exactly 1 year ago by his administration. Funding for the program to boost employment and advance the economy will be raised to almost $200 billion. South Korea continued to add jobs last month, data showing that employment continues to recover from the lows of the pandemic a year earlier. Almost 600,000 more people employed in June. And the daily number of new coronavirus infections in South Korea rises to an all-time high, more than 1,600 cases on Wednesday, as stricter distancing rules expand to other parts of the country. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. President Moon Jae-in has announced an upgraded version of the Korean New Deal to mark 1 year since the grand plan was first launched in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. There were two original pillars to the initiative: the green pillar, focusing on eco-friendly industries and projects, and the digital pillar. The new version adds a pillar for human values, aimed at strengthening the social safety net. Kim Min-ji has the details.
The Korean New Deal 2.0 calls for investment of over $190 billion by 2025, up from the initial plan of about $140 billion. President Moon Jae-in said the upgraded version, unveiled Wednesday to mark the initiative's first anniversary, is aimed at expanding the social safety net by adding a new pillar, the Human New Deal.
휴먼 뉴딜은 고용 안전망과 사회 안전망을 한층 확대하고 발전시킨 것입니다. 격차 해소와 안전망 확충, 사람 투자에 더 많은 관심을 기울이고 산업 구조의 급속한 변화에 따른 노동 이동 등 포용적 전환에 대한 지원도 확대하려는 것입니다.
Specifically, the Human New Deal calls for support policies to help young people build wealth, stabilize housing, and to reduce the burden of education expenses by spending $43 billion. It will also involve stepping up investment to foster exports in new growth industries, such as software, biohealth, and future cars. The Korean New Deal was first launched in July 2020 as a means to transform the country into a pace-setter and to respond to the pandemic through projects nationwide, embracing two main pillars, digital and green. Moon said the government will also speed up the digital transformation by investing around $42 billion to integrate 5G and AI into people's daily lives and to foster new industries related to metaverse technology, cloud computing, and blockchain. On the green front, the government plans to pump in $53 billion to bolster related industries, expand infrastructure, and pursue eco-friendly mobility projects for carbon neutrality. The rest will be set aside for regional New Deal projects. Separately, the government will also create an additional New Deal policy fund worth over $85 million that the public can invest in and share the returns.
한판 뉴딜은 코로나 극복의 희망이며 우리 정부를 넘어선 대한민국 미래 전략입니다. 한판 뉴딜 2.0에 머물지 않고 선도 국가를 향해 앞으로 나아갈 것입니다.
The government expects to create some 2.5 million new jobs when the plans are implemented, up from the initial target of 1.9 million. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And as well as extra investment in digital and green technology, the new version of the Moon administration's New Deal includes additional investment in promising future industries like metaverse and blockchain. The plan also seeks to address inequality. Paeun-ji takes a closer look at what's changed.
South Korea's finance ministry on Wednesday laid out specific plans for the upgraded New Deal project. For the Digital New Deal, along with the original plan to adopt 5G and AI technology in public administration and expand non-face-to-face infrastructure in education and healthcare, the government has decided to make additional investment in future industries. This includes cloud services, blockchain technology, and the metaverse, a new kind of online virtual space where people can work, play games, purchase products, and socialize with others.
We plan on developing a metaverse platform that anyone can take part in and create contents. We are also going to support those creating different metaverse contents.
For the Green New Deal, the government said it will improve the way it monitors carbon emissions. It also plans to expand its eco-friendly mobility project by putting 2,000 more hydrogen buses on the roads. As for the newly introduced concept of Human New Deal, the government aims to provide a social and labor safety net, especially for young people in their 20s and 30s. It focuses on investing in people, creating jobs, and narrowing the income inequality gap.
We will work on nurturing 8,000 professionals in the semiconductor industry, 3,000 for future vehicles, and 90,000 for the software industry.
The Human New Deal also includes reducing the burden of housing costs for young people. To do this, the government has decided to raise the maximum loan amount that young people can get. Also, single parents who receive federal funding will be able to get roughly $1,000 a year more. And those in the low income bracket will be able to receive around $90 a year for cultural activities. 배은지, Arirang News.
And with today marking 1 year since the Moon administration launched the Korean New Deal, and now having announced the Korean New Deal 2.0, I'm joined on the line today by Dr. Kim Se-won, professor of economics at Ewha Women's University, to take an in-depth look at the initiative and the changes announced today. Professor Kim, good afternoon. Thanks for coming on.
Good afternoon, Devin.
Well, so it's already been 1 year since the Korean New Deal was announced, and originally, of course, the plan had two pillars, which are the green pillar, dealing with the environment, and the digital pillar. In the past year, what kind of progress have we seen on these fronts?
Well, President Moon's Korean New Deal plan is announced last year in the middle of coronavirus pandemic outbreak. Since there were lots of emergency situations related to the pandemic, Korean New Deal plan got short shrift, even though it is a very important blueprint that changes industry structure and the path of Korean economy. 21.3 trillion won Korean New Deal budget is incorporated this year's regular budget, and the size of Korean New Deal budget will be increased up to over 30 trillion won in next year's budget. Particularly, President Moon retrospects that both of the wave of digital innovation and environment-friendly innovation are spread to every corner of the economy in the last year, and it became an important momentum to recover economy under ongoing shocks from the pandemic.
That's a great point. We have seen a big increase in the digital aspect of our lives in the past year. And as part of the New Deal, the government announced New Deal funds to people for people to invest in so they can take part in this growth that the government hopes to achieve. Tell us about these funds and where you see them going.
200 billion won size Korean New Deal funds started selling from March of this year. In raising 200 billion won funds, 60 billion is provided by government, and the remaining 140 billion is purchased by private investors. Raising this fund was very successful because government guarantees the principle of investment, and therefore all funds were sold out in a single week. Korean New Deal funds return relatively performs well so far. This year's return for these Korean New Deal funds amounts to 14%, which outperformed KOSPI return by 3% as of now. Along with this popularity of Korean New Deal funds, government has decided to raise another New Deal funds of 100 billion won size to increase general public's opportunity to reap the result of Korean New Deal investment.
Well, it is hard to beat a return like that, especially if the principal is guaranteed. Very interesting. And now today at an event for the 1 year anniversary, President Moon, of course, announced the New Deal 2.0, and this raises the overall scale, as you've told us about, adding a pillar on strengthening the social safety net and a pillar they're calling the Human New Deal. So tell us about what was announced today.
As we have seen from previous reports, President Moon said the Human New Deal would be added to the projects as a new pillar to the existing digital and green New Deal. It means that upgraded Korean New Deal 2.0 is focusing on intensifying the previous safety net to Human New Deal. The Human New Deal includes intensive supports on building up employment safety net for young workers, and lessening the gaps in education and caring kids and old people. Also, it includes many different kinds of supports on re-education over fast-changing industry structure, from manufacturing to first-wave industries like IT and bio. And in addition, the Human New Deal also provides housing support, particularly on young workers.
And total investment in the Korean New Deal has been raised to now total about $200 billion US, and this is the plan through 2025. What kind of economic effect do you think this will have overall?
According to simple economic researches, when government spending increases by 220 trillion won or 200 billion US, total income of Korean people increases by a half of it, or 110 trillion won on average. But government's 220 trillion won spending on this program can't be understood as a simple physical expenditure like building a new bridge on Han River. It is a bold attempt to reconstruct Korean economy from conventional manufacturing dependent economy to high-tech economy. So if Korean New Deal is completed successfully, Korean economy will be on the totally different system by 2025 as a global leader of high-tech and environment-friendly industries. It means that Korean New Deal plan comes with unprecedented economic opportunities in the long run if it is completed successfully.
Yeah, they sure have set the bar high. And you mentioned earlier that some parts of this plan, though, have been getting short shrift from the government. And there are critics who say that at this point it's not really appropriate to be adding more money to the Korean New Deal while that is the situation as they describe it. How should the government be moving forward on this, in your view?
Previously, we have kind of similar experiences of Korean New Deal, like President Lee Myung-bak's green economic growth and President Park Geun-hye's reunification of North and South Korea funds. Both were completed, disappeared as these presidents' terms are finished. So there is a possibility of Korean New Deal of President Moon face the same fate because President Moon's presidential term finishes only next year. But Korean New Deal plan is supposed to be terminated in 2025. If Korean New Deal is not well succeeded by next president, implementation of this program could be much weaker in the long run. So whoever the next president of Korea would be, if Korean New Deal plan is strongly agreed and supported by general public, Korean New Deal plan will be successfully completed with great outcomes until 2025.
Well, we'll look forward to getting your insights on the progress of the Korean New Deal 2.0 as it progresses over the next year. Professor Kim, thank you as always for making time for us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Now, South Korea saw a rise in employment for a fourth consecutive month in June, an increase of almost 600,000 from a year earlier. But the rise in jobs last month was slower than in the 2 months before. Min Soo-kyun reports.
South Korea's job market appears to be on track for recovery after a year-long slump caused by the pandemic. According to Statistics Korea Wednesday, the number of employed amounted to 27.6 million in June, up 582,000 from a year earlier. This marked the fourth straight month of job gains. Employment figures have been on the rise since March, following 12 consecutive months of on-year decline. But job additions in June saw slower growth compared to the previous 2 months, when the number of working people increased by more than 600,000. The agency attributed last month's growth to several factors.
Robust exports, improved economic activity and the base effect from job losses last year led to a fourth consecutive month of job growth.
By sector, the health and social welfare industry and the construction industry have seen strong employment figures, driving the local job market up in June. But the wholesale and retail sector remained the hardest hit, still down by 164,000 jobs on year. The country's unemployment rate fell to 3.8% last month, down 0.5 percentage points on year. Unemployment fell for those in their 20s, 30s, and 50s, but not for people in their 60s. The number of people who are not economically active also dropped to 16.3 million last month, down for the fourth consecutive month. While the latest report shows that the labor market is recovering, the fourth wave of the pandemic is widely expected to take a heavy toll on employment in the service sector from July. Min Suk-hyun, Arirang News.
South Korea's exports last month in the sector of information and communication technology rose to a new high for the month of June, thanks to strong demand for semiconductors and displays. According to the Trade Ministry, exports of ICT products came to around $19.3 million last month, up more than 29% on year. That's the most on record for June, and it's the 13th consecutive monthly rise. For the first half of the year in total, ICT exports stood at some $103 billion, which is the second best performance for the first half. Semiconductors were up around 34% last month from a year ago, and displays jumped almost 30%. South Korea's outstanding household bank loans, including mortgages, rose to an all-time high last month of $896 billion. According to the Bank of Korea, loans rose in June from the month before by 6.3 trillion won, or about $5.5 billion. About 80% of the increase was home mortgage loans. And in the first half of this year, in total, loans rose by about $36 billion, which is the most on record for the first half. South Korea today had its highest number of new coronavirus cases so far, more than 1,600. Also, around 30% of recent cases have been untraceable. The authorities have decided to raise the level of social distancing in areas beyond the Greater Seoul region. Choi Won-jung reports.
South Korea shattered its record of daily COVID-19 infections with more than 1,600 new cases on Wednesday, 465 more than the previous day, and the highest yet since the start of the pandemic. All but 47 cases were locally transmitted, raising the total number of cases to over 171,000. In the Greater Seoul area, Seoul alone reported 638 new cases on Wednesday, going over 600 for the first time, mostly from cases linked to department stores and workplaces. Health authorities are also worried over the fast spread of Delta variant across the country, leading to more infections even outside the Greater Seoul area.
The average daily COVID-19 cases outside the capital region has been 300 over the past week, which is 24% of the total daily caseload. The number has doubled from 133 cases last week.
And that's why starting on Thursday, the authorities are raising social distancing measures to level 2 across most of the rest of the country, including Busan, Ulsan, Daegu, and Jeju. Only Sejong, Jeollado provinces and Gyeongsangbuk-do province are staying under level 1. Under the level 2 restriction, up to 8 people are allowed to gather. Bars, coffee shops, and restaurants must close by midnight. And on Jeju Island, bars must stay closed starting Thursday. Meanwhile, due to spike in infections at schools, beginning Wednesday, all students in the Greater Seoul area under level 4 distancing measures will take online classes until July 25th, when many schools close for summer vacation. And private academies are still allowed to have in-person classes until 10 p.m. Choi Won-jung, Arirang News.
And the South Korean health authorities are taking vaccine appointments again, starting tonight for people in their 50s. Once signed up, they'll get their shots from July 26th to August 14th. Lee Kyung-eun has this report.
Amid tight vaccine supplies, South Korea is trying to push forward with its inoculation campaign by readjusting its vaccination dates. Part of those efforts is resuming bookings for those aged between 55 and 59 at 8 p.m. on Wednesday. This is to give them another chance to sign up after an early shutdown in bookings prevented many from applying on Monday. That shutdown, the KDCA explained, was a preemptive measure to prevent any vaccine shortage.
This was to prevent any registered recipients from being unable to get the shots, as there is still uncertainty over how many vaccine doses are set to arrive in the last week of July.
The newly opened reservations will last until July 24th, and the opening time has changed to 8 p.m. so people could apply outside of work hours. The resumption comes after the authorities look for ways to roll out the limited vaccines more effectively. And the conclusion was to extend the actual inoculation period by a week. That would allow them to disperse vaccine recipients throughout more days, reducing the pressure on tight supplies. With that, these people will get the shots from July 26th to August 14th. As part of the same push to increase efficiency, the government will be breaking down the upcoming reservations into more phases. Those aged between 50 and 54 will be divided into two groups based on their age, and each group can apply on alternate days starting July 19th. And authorities are considering a similar strategy to manage the mass reservations for those under 50, like grouping them based on age or birth years. But they made it clear that it is just a matter of increasing efficiency, not any delay or shortage of the vaccine.
A total of 10 million vaccine doses are planned for July, which will be arriving throughout the month. We've made it clear that there's no problem with vaccine supply. They are arriving as planned.
The government will make sure that those who already registered can get their shots as previously announced. This includes teachers and senior students at high schools who will start getting their shots next Monday. 이경은, Arirang News.
In other news, the K-pop superstars BTS sold more CDs in the U.S. in the first half of the year than any other artist. According to Billboard, BTS sold some 573,000 CDs from January 1st to July 1st. Second was Taylor Swift with some 414,000. Meanwhile, it's been announced that BTS, along with many other global artists, will be taking part in this year's Global Citizen Live. This concert will promote vaccine equity and an end to global poverty. It airs on September 25th on ABC, the BBC, YouTube, and Twitter. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.